So before we start the presentation, I just wanted to give everyone a little background and introduce myself, as well as Savannah. She'll jump in right after me. So my name is Courtney Rhodes Mason. I am the Director of Marketing and Recruitment for Idaho State University at the College of Technology. And I am relatively new in my position. I started the beginning of February, right before COVID hit. And so I've been kind of learning in this weird in-between time. And it's been really exciting to kind of be a part of this specific college, just because it has been not as negatively impacted as we thought it would during COVID. And so that's one thing that I'm really excited to talk to you guys all about, is about trade and technology specific degrees, because of the kind of foolproof nature that it tends to have. And so with that, I'll let Savannah introduce herself and then we'll get started with this presentation.
Hello, everybody. My name is Savannah Alma, and I'm a Boise State admissions counselor. I've been here for around a year now. I just graduated in 2019 from Boise State with my degree in marketing and a certificate of elementary Spanish. I typically actually work with students that are from rural populations as well as first generation, as I was from that same population myself when I went to college. And so I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about two-year options as well as four-year options today in today's presentation, but you guys are going to learn a lot of really amazing things from Courtney. So tune in and hang out with us. We're really glad that y'all joined us today.
All right, thanks, Savannah. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully you all can see this presentation. All right. And for some reason, it's not letting me go into present mode. So I apologize if it looks kind of funky. Let me see if it'll let me. Maybe? Nope, it's gone all wonky on me again. All right. So this is finding your best fit. This is trade and technology. And so what we're going to talk about is the route that you can kind of take with these degrees. The thing that's nice about this route is there's a lot of different options and they're not all bad. None of them are bad, actually. So like most of us are aware, the traditional route of high school, graduate, get a four-year degree, go into the workplace is kind of changing, especially with this new generation of students coming through. There's a lot more dynamic nature to education as we move forward. So students and especially parents want to see the value in the education that their students are receiving, that they're paying for. So some students are going directly into the workforce. Some have decided, instead of spending all this money in going into a four-year degree, and they don't even know if they like it, they're doing some certifications, they're doing some apprenticeships, and then they're building on top of their degree. So this roadmap has branches that kind of articulate that a little bit, in the sense of there's no wrong turn. So a certification can definitely apply into an apprenticeship, can build onto an associate's degree, can build into a bachelor's degree, and into the workforce and industry. And so moving forward, those are kind of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about, is this mode that we're starting to see transition into of lifelong learning, these stackable degrees. So starting off with a certification and getting a one-year certification in a specific area of study, something as simple as brushing up on skills that you've already developed, or getting a certification, going out into the workforce, and then realizing I want to get more education in order to move myself up the ladder. So then they go into an associate's degree, and you spend 2 years getting your associate's degree, and then that funnels you directly into a four-year degree, where you're not necessarily taking these loose credits that don't directly apply to what you're aiming for. The other thing that's really nice about this lifelong learning is they are current and they align with current labor demands. So these are options that are offered that are closely aligned with what the workforce is demanding in terms of high skill, high wage, hands-on degrees, but it's also evolving. So these aren't just like stagnant degrees, and not to knock anybody, but it's not, you know, your traditional English degree. You graduate and then what do you do with your English degree? This is information that is constantly being adjusted. And so a good example of that is specific at the College of Technology, we have something called TAC meetings. And so those are advisory council meetings that allow industry to directly interact with faculty members and staff members to let them know the trends that they're seeing in their fields. And so our staff and faculty can directly align the curriculum to workforce needs. So when students are graduating, they become more competitive in what they're doing. The other thing that's super important that I want to articulate here with these trade and technology degrees is the commitment to educational excellence. And these are for students no matter their background. And I think that's something that's really important, is these are students that can come from a wide variety of experiences and background and socioeconomic standing and still come out at the same level. There are resources, there are kind of support that is included in a lot of these degrees and at all of these universities to make sure that these students are successful in their programs. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is career readiness. So these trade and technology programs are hands-on programs. So these are great for students who learn in a format that's more personal, that's engaging, that's tactile. They are provided laboratories and spaces that mirror the workforce industry. So there's a seamless transition between coming from a high school lab, or it could be like a good example is a high school auto technology program. So they're getting a little bit of experience working on cars, and then they go into an auto technology program, an associate's degree at a university. And those laboratories look just like any auto technology garage that you would come into. So they become more comfortable once they transition into the workforce. So there's not as much of a learning curve when they graduate. They're walking into a classroom that looks exactly like what their future career is going to look like. And so it makes it a little more seamless in that transition. They're also being trained on tools and technology that meet industry standards. So the biggest thing that comes through these laboratories, these classroom spaces, is making sure that students are familiar with not only the theory, but the application of these tools and the technology that they're going to be working with. A lot of times when students graduate, the biggest comment that we've heard from a university standpoint is these students understand, but they don't know how to apply. And that's where the kind of hands-on skill part comes into play, is being comfortable with picking up a tool and knowing where to put it, rather than I know what that tool is and I know how it's supposed to be used, I just can't physically figure it out myself. And so that's where that transition in a lot of these trade and technology programs come into play, is that actual hands-on skill that they get.
Courtney, quick question for you.
Yes.
How are laboratories working during the COVID?
So that's a really good question. So these laboratories are working actually really well during COVID. There is social distancing that's happening. So students are only working on their own project. They're not doing group projects like what they were using before. Masks are required, gloves are required. And then when teachers need to interact with them, there's a 6-foot distance. So these labs are still going really well. A good example of some adjustments that we've had to make is our cosmetology program, for example. A lot of our students would actually have the opportunity to work on real clients. So the campus community could actually come in. Of course, they get a discounted rate because students are practicing on your hair. But that has not been allowed as much. So they have mannequin heads that they work on and that they can take home. So if we needed to go remote, they could take those home and continue to work. In a hands-on setting, it's just not with a real life client. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Yes, perfect. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the opportunity to get in and out as quickly as possible. I think the biggest thing, and I think COVID has highlighted this greatly, is the bang for your buck, so to speak. And the nice thing about this, especially in Idaho, is there's something called dual credit. And these are offered in a variety of different high schools. And it allows students to earn college credit while they're in high school towards a specific program. The nice thing about this is these credits allow students to explore some of these programs before they even get into those that higher level of training. So say a student is interested in CAD, for example, and they wanted to try it out in high school before they invested fully. They can take some of those credits and experience that class before they really commit to a program. But the other nice thing to that is it also allows them to get a head start in these programs. So we've had a few students get their associates and are in and out of the program by the time they're 18 years old because they have been taking these dual credit courses through their high school experience. So it eliminates the duplication of credits. It does, it has cost savings. You get lower costs for credits, and it provides a jump start on college. So students are getting in, out, moving on with what they want to do. If they want to go into a 4-year degree and finish that off, then they can. If they want to jump straight into the workforce, they're getting a jump on, by almost 4 years at that point. So I think that's super, super important. It also is a great opportunity to introduce basic skill development. So a lot of times, students who jump directly into a 4-year university, there is a huge, huge transition that happens in terms of being responsible for taking classes, showing up on time, study habits. And if those aren't already set in stone in a high school setting, which majority of people aren't, it helps ease that transition a little bit more when they move into higher education, into a college setting. So they're already taking college courses and they understand the rigors that go along with that and the study habits that need to happen with those. And so then when they get into these full classes, it's a lot easier to transition into that and it's not such a rough go. And so that's kind of a benefit to these trade and technology, is it offers these dual credits in high school that kind of gives them an opportunity to get a jump start on what other students are doing. Perfect. And this is where I'll turn it over to Savannah to talk about 2-year and 4-year institutions. Oh, I think I lost Savannah. Okay. Well, in the meantime, I will cover this part. I don't know what happened to Savannah, probably some technical glitch here. So the nice thing about a 2-year institution, and this isn't just necessarily community college, there's a lot of students, or there's a lot of opportunities at 4-year institutions that have an associate degree program path. So a good example of that is our cybersecurity program, for example. So that's a technology degree that you can get in 2 years. And so you can come in, do a 2-year degree in cybersecurity, and then if you would like to continue, you can do another 2 years, and it's kind of a feeder program. We call it a 2 and 2. And that 2 years will then apply into a 2-year bachelor's degree. The nice thing about this 2 and 2 is not only does it feed into a program directly, it eliminates a lot of the kind of like not necessary, and I hate to say that, the kind of bonus classes that we get to have, those elective courses, it eliminates that. So you're really focusing and really honing in on the program that you want. It also cuts the cost in half of your traditional degree, which is obvious because you're doing less. But the nice thing about it is you can do your 2-year, you can get a certificate, you can get your associates, get out, do the workforce if you want to for a couple years, and then come back and finish it for another 2 years. And then you're not required, I should say, to do it all in one go. There's a break in between, which allows students to explore the workforce, see if this is something they're actually interested in doing, and then pursuing a career further than that. And then with a 4-year institution, this is your traditional college experience. So this is something that most people are familiar with. It's from high school directly into college. It's a 4-year commitment. At the end of the 4 years, you earn your bachelor's degree. And there's nothing wrong with the traditional program path. And so I think that's something that's really important to showcase, is understanding that just because people take different routes doesn't mean that they're bad. And I think we have Savannah back. And I will let her. Hi, Savannah.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. My
Yes.
internet just went down, so I had to use my phone.
No, you're okay. It's okay. I spoke a little bit about the 2-year institution, so if you want to jump in and talk a little bit more about the 4, that's perfect timing.
Yeah, definitely. So with the 4-year institution, I'm not sure exactly what you guys covered with the 2-year, but a lot of students will actually transfer from 2-year institutions over to a 4-year institution. Or a lot of students actually consider going to a 4-year institution, of course, because that's kind of considered the more traditional route as far as going to college goes. However, I always like to point out to students that it's totally up to your own preference as far as which one you would prefer to start with. I think that starting at a 2-year institution, what's really nice about that is that there is a lot of cost saving when it comes to starting at a 2-year university. Or 2-year institution. You get some of those classes out of the way, and you can actually join a 4-year institution as course certified if you'd like to do that. And what it means to be course certified at a 4-year institution means that all of those core classes that you might be required to take right off the bat when you first get to a 4-year institution, you then no longer have to take those. Instead, you get to jump right into any of those upper division courses. Now, 4-year institutions are really great because with these ones, you're actually going to be working towards your undergraduate degree. So that'd be like a bachelor's degree in maybe in science or in business and engineering and any of those different programs that might consider you to have, or consider you more to have a little bit of extra schooling, right? So if you're somebody who maybe got your nursing degree at a 2-year institution, you'd start as an RN. But a lot of hospitals will also want you to have your BSN too. And so what you can do is you can go to a 2-year institution and then transfer to a 4-year institution and get your BSN, or you can start off at a 4-year institution. Now, some advantages of just starting right off at a 4-year institution is establishing yourself with a lot of your professors, advisors, any of those different programs that you might be interested in. Typically, the more time that you spend in those programs, the better connections that you make. And so with that being said, 4-year institutions have a lot of connections around the community most of the time to be able to get you different things like internships or have research opportunities, all of that kind of stuff. And so typically when you're a student and you start at a four-year institution, as you're taking some of those first year classes and you're really starting to get into the different degree programs that you're interested in, what happens is you make a lot of really great connections with professors and with different advisors who will help point you in those different directions that you might be able to take as far as internships and that kind of stuff goes. Now, the other thing with the four-year institution that I like to point out as well is that sometimes with students, it's not just about going to school, right? A lot of students would really like to have that first year experience where you get to go and meet new people and live in the dorms, that kind of stuff. Now, there are two-year institutions that actually do have dorms so that you could go and you could live in those while doing schooling for those first 2 years. But at a four-year institution, that's probably the most prominent thing that you're going to find as far as first years wanting to have that first year experience. Also with four-year institutions, it tends to be a little bit more involved as far as the university goes. So there's lots of different clubs, that kind of stuff that you can join. Now, those are kind of the differences. A lot of students, if you wanted to go ahead and switch over to the next slide, Courtney, a lot of students are like, okay, but which one is the right one for me? And there's no wrong answer. So whether you wanted to go to a trade school, or if you wanted to just get some certificates, or maybe you first wanted to start off at a 2-year and then transfer to a 4-year, maybe your job only requires you to have your associate's degree. There is no wrong answer as far as which one you would like to pick, but there are definitely some perks, and then obviously there's some different things that go along with each one that might be most applicable to you. And so for some students, 2-year is great because it saves a lot of money. Maybe when they're first joining college, they're not really sure what it is that they want to do. When you first graduate high school, some students are like, I have no idea what's out there for me yet, and I'd like to take some time to really be able to explore a lot of different fields and figure out what it is that I want to do. And so that's why a 2-year is a good pick for you. And then some students know exactly what it is that they want to do right off the bat. They sign up for scholarships, that kind of stuff, and then they attend that four-year university. It is completely up to where you are at in your process as far as what you would like to pick. And so we always suggest to students, definitely take a peek into what it is that you think you might be interested in, and then figure out what's the best pathway for me. Is it a trade school? Is it getting some certificates? Is it having that hands-on experience? Or is it going to be a little bit more lecture-based where you can go in, you can learn a bunch of stuff and then get internships and all of that? So lots of really great options in that way. And so just as you're picking, the best thing that I can always tell students is to always look at how they felt during high school, and then to go ahead and look at what it is that they want to do with their career. Like, what do they see themselves doing in the future? And if the student is still maybe a little bit confused, I talk to them a little bit more about going to that 2-year university first, or that 2-year institution first, just to kind of check out, explore different things, figure out what it is maybe that they're really passionate about, and then pursuing that 4-year degree if their career goals actually require that. But then of course, a lot of students will still want to go to that 4-year university. Those are great pathways if you're also somebody who's looking to pursue a master's or a doctorate, something along those lines too. So it's just completely up to what your own career goals are and what it is that you're looking for to get out of your education.
So Savannah, there's a
Yeah.
question on the board that asks, what would you suggest for a student who wants to go into a pre-med program?
Definitely. And so this is the like funny thing about all of these. So when it comes to going to a 2-year like institution first, if you wanted to start there for pre-med, you still could do that. You could get some of your core classes out of the way and then transfer over to a 4-year university. However, if you did want to go into a pre-med, know that a lot of times with 4-year universities, they have really great health science programs. And so ISU, I know for sure, has a really great health science program. Boise State has health science. There's lots of different universities all over that do. And so students like that usually are typically pursuing something like pre-med, and they'd be taking classes in biology, chemistry, and classes in just pre-health sciences, that kind of stuff. And so for me, I would suggest, because pre-med is on track to go and get your master's degree, a doctorate, depending on, of course, what field it is that you want to go into with the medical school, I would suggest starting at something like a 2-year maybe, and then going to a 4-year, or just starting right off the bat at a 4-year. Like I said, it's kind of up to your own personal preference. You have to check how you feel about cost, and also maybe if you're still trying to figure out if pre-med is the right track for you, then 2 years probably great. But if you can apply for scholarships and that kind of stuff, then get yourself established in a pre-med program at a 4-year university. I think that that's a great way to go as well.
Savannah, real quick, I wanted to jump in
Yeah.
on that. The other thing that's really nice about pre-med is if they're unsure or if there's worry about whether they can handle the actual physical aspect of it. There's a lot of students that I've interacted with that can grasp the theory really well, but then when it comes to the hands-on part, that's the part that they struggle with. One of the nice thing about these trade programs is at Idaho State University specifically, and I'm just going to reference this because I'm more familiar with it, we have a nursing program. And so the nice thing about that is through the nursing program, through our specific, there's an LNR, there's an ADNR, and those are all the variations of licensing and registering and certified, where you kind of grow through those aspects as you learn. You're actually getting hands-on experience, and you're required to do clinicals, which means you're going into hospitals as a first year or second year student. So you're not having to wait to get into a doctorate or a master's level in order to have those clinicals straight out of the gate. So that might be a good option as well for that student, to have the opportunity to engage and see if, one, if they can handle the skills and the study aspect, two, to see if they can handle the tangible nature of medicine. And it also puts them into a hospital a lot sooner than some of these other programs, and it sets them up really nicely for future education in terms of going on to be doctor or whatever it is that they want to do at a four-year university. Because I think the thing that a lot of students struggle with is, yes, I want to do this and I can understand the theory behind it, but the reality part of applying that theory, of working in a hospital environment, can be quite a daunting change for a lot of students. And so the sooner they have those opportunities, the sooner they can adjust to if that's what they want to do, and that they can find the pathway that works for them.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that it really depends on where it is that you decide to go to school, because of course there's lots of really great trade schools that you could go to. There's two-year institutions that have nursing programs that you can look into that have lots of hands-on experience that you can get through simulations or different things like that, as well as some four-year universities too, who actually get you into clinicals within the first 2 years that you're a student too. So do your research and really look into what the university has to offer, because there are definitely like a whole bunch of different options for you as students to be able to get certificates and all that kind of stuff at each institution that you're looking into, whether that be a trade school, a 2-year, or even a 4-year as well. And so if you're really looking for something that is hands-on, then that's a question to ask the university that you're looking into or the school that you're looking into, because they'll be able to tell you or explain to you a little bit better. Of course, like if you were to join our trade school, then with that one, you're going to get X, Y, and Z hands-on training, these certificates, you'd be working doing this. And then sometimes the universities can also offer that kind of stuff too. So I would definitely just check in with them and find out what it is that they have to offer for you before making your decision, and then find out, then that's when you start to compare things like, okay, cost and time that you would be spending doing it and that kind of stuff too.
All right, fantastic. I have another quick question on the board. The student asked, I am thinking about a 2+2 program. What community colleges and universities have good engineering programs? Any suggestions?
Yeah, Courtney, do you know of some of the community colleges in like Idaho that have any robust engineering programs? I believe that like ISU has some stuff, do they not?
Yes, so ISU has some great stuff. So through the College of Technology, there's tons of 2+2 programs in terms of engineering. We have a robotics specifically and communication, and that is fully hands-on program. It goes directly into a bachelor's of science degree as well. And then we have a whole, we call it ESTech, and so that's energy systems technology program that allows you to work in a variety of different engineering outfits. And so those filter directly into those. I'm not super specific with community colleges throughout the universe or throughout Idaho, but those are great starting options to look into, that give you the 2+2. Cybersecurity is another one that I've mentioned. There's nuclear operations. There's industrial communication, that deals with engineering as well, and the communication that goes into cyber optics with at industrial plants. So there's quite a few options with engineering that you can go into with a 2+2. And you can get very specific at the beginning, or you can go pretty wide with your engineering interests. It just depends on how you want to approach that program.
Fantastic, fantastic. Do you guys have any suggestions, or for someone who wants to go into marketing?
Yeah, I think that again, this is something that with marketing, I would suggest, obviously, anytime that you're looking in the job field for marketing, and I can speak to this as myself having graduated with my marketing degree, most of the time, a lot of employers are looking for you to have an undergraduate degree. So they're looking for you to have a bachelor's degree. And so with that being said, of course, looking into a four-year institution is going to be a great route to go with marketing, but also keep in mind that you can start at a two-year university with marketing as well, and you can get some of those core classes out of the way. And then that way you only have to finish off another 2 years at a four-year university in order to get that bachelor's degree. It's completely up to your own personal preference as far as cost goes, because that's going to be the main thing that's really saving you as far as going to a community college versus a four-year for your marketing degree. Starting at a two-year, of course, you're going to have cost benefits for those first 2 years, and then you can transfer over to a four-year. But I would suggest probably in the marketing field, at least having an undergraduate degree, because it does make you more competitive in our job field. And even in the marketing world, I would suggest for those of you who are looking into it, while you can definitely find some really amazing jobs with just your undergraduate or your bachelor's degree, even looking into master's programs is a really great opportunity too, because that's just something else that will set you apart from anybody else who's applying to jobs too. And so I would suggest, if you're looking into going into that marketing world, definitely look into things like graphic design, looking into business programs at universities, and that's probably going to be the best route for you. So I would suggest probably an undergraduate or a bachelor's degree, but you'll be able to find great classes in community colleges to start you off if you wanted to do that and save some money in the beginning as well.
Yeah, I want to tag on to that with Savannah. I also got my degree in marketing and communications. I double majored in public relations as well. And something to keep in mind is I wholeheartedly agree that you definitely need an undergraduate bachelor's degree in the marketing field. One of the things that I would recommend is possibly doing your first 2 years at a community college level, and make sure that whatever community college that you decide to take those courses in, to get those kind of basic, your standard like English, writing, speaking, public speaking skills out of the way at a community college level, but make sure and triple check with the university that you want to transfer that those credits would actually transfer, because that's one of the hardest things, is some of these credits don't transfer, and the reason being is the curriculum's different. And so I would double, triple check those, but that's probably the route I would recommend. And during your community college, those first 2 years, get as much hands-on experience as you possibly can. Any job that you can do with graphic design, with managing someone's social media, any little job like that. It doesn't really matter if it's, a family friend or whoever it may be, but being able to showcase at the end of your 4-year education that, hey, look, I ran a social media campaign. I managed 5 social media accounts, and I designed 86 different things, whatever it may be. That just kind of puts you at the next level. And I think that's the nice thing about some of these trade programs, is the application part. Is, yes, I understand the business part, I understand the marketing theories, but this is how I applied them. And being able to showcase that in a kind of portfolio standard is what gives you that cutting edge with employers. Any other questions before we move on?
I think we're good right now. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. All right, so one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you guys about with labor and technology is, or not labor and technology, I apologize, with trade and technology is the labor demand. So this is taken directly from the Idaho Department of Labor, and these are high wage, high skill, high demand jobs. And this is how they've kind of broken them down. The nice thing about these is our students are reporting back to us how much they're earning straight out of the gate. So a good example is welding. So welding is a 2-year degree that you can receive, and our students are being offered straight out of the gate $90,000 starting. So these high demand, high skill kind of labor areas are where you have such a niche that you can build. Not a lot of people are doing them, so there's a lot of requests and a lot of job opportunities for them. They require a lot of skill and hands-on training, which is what you would get in a 2-year process. So when you're walking out of your program, you're being snatched up like left and right, and they're paying premium dollars for it. And so these are some of the top ones in the different areas that I wanted to highlight is health occupations, technology, trade, and industry. And so these are huge, huge demand areas where students are doing 2-year programs and walking out being offered jobs starting at 60, 70, 80, 90,000, depending on the skill set that are required. So I think the one thing that I really want to articulate is just because we have this notion of a trade school doesn't mean it's not a viable career field for people to go into. And I think that's something that there's this negative notion of associated with trade and industry and trade and technology is just because you're doing 2 years doesn't mean these aren't viable careers. And that's the nice thing about this relationship with industry is you can continue to grow and develop. So anyone who's been working in a career field for a certain amount of time and wants to do a change, but doesn't want to dedicate 4 years, 6 years into getting a master's program or whatever it may be, can transition into something that's still viable that they can get in and out in 2 years or less. Or if you're already in one of those high demand, high skill jobs and you need to kind of just level up a little bit by a certification and it's 6 months, a year training, and you sit for the exam and you get in and out and you automatically get a boost in terms of your education or growth on the career ladder. And I think that's really important and something I wanted to highlight. So in terms of wrapping this all up, what we're really saying is, 1, do your research on what you're really interested in. And 2, don't be afraid of not taking the traditional path. Each course, each section has its benefits. Each degree option has its positives and negatives. And I think the important thing is doing your research and not being afraid of trade and technology and not being afraid of, oh, I'm just getting a certification or, those kinds of misnomers. And I think the biggest thing is the traditional path is not the only path, but it's not a bad path either. And I hate to say that. I feel like I'm leaving it very open-ended, but I think that the biggest thing is what fits best for you. And I think the transition that we're starting to see in higher education is adapting more to the needs of our students. So it doesn't have to be a traditional socioeconomic student that comes in, does their 4 years, gets out, gets a job, works their way up a career ladder. It can be someone from a different background who's coming in and getting an associate's and walking out with a job and earning $90,000 a year. It can be a student who decides, I'm going to start taking some classes in high school and see if I'm interested in this. And if not, great. I didn't waste any time during my formative years of going through college trying to figure that out, and then realizing, 2 years in, I really hate this major, and having to panic and change. So I think that's really important to articulate there, that there's a lot of options available, and don't be afraid of looking in a non-traditional area to start off. All right. Any questions for us?
Just to add, oh, sorry, I was just going to say, just to add.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, just to add to that really quick too, don't be afraid to ask questions either. Like any university or school or anything that you're looking to go to, they need to be able to provide those answers for you. And so asking those questions as far as, is this going to really be a good fit for me? And telling them or asking them, hey, like, will you explain to me why this is a good fit? Can you tell me what the benefits are going to be? Universities and schools should be able to answer all those questions for you. So don't be afraid to ask that kind of stuff, because in the end, you want to do what's going to be best for you. And so just make sure that that's the path that you want to take. And don't be afraid to reach out to anybody at those universities and ask those questions, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help you and to answer all of those questions too.
Fantastic, fantastic. We have a little bit more time, so we're going to leave this open just for another minute or so, see if anybody else has any other questions or concerns. But before we go, I just want to ask you guys, if you have any parting shots for our attendees today.
No, I think we kind of wrapped it up at the very end.
Okay.
But like I said, if you guys have any additional questions that come up after that, please feel free to reach out to Savannah or I, and we'd be happy to answer them or point you in a direction to look for more information. I think the biggest thing is with this day and age, with this generation of students, COVID specifically, I think the important part is finding the university that fits to you and not necessarily you fitting to the university. And it's okay to shop around, and it's okay to look around. That's the beauty of having so many opportunities and options available to you.